Hi guys, I'm Katie Room from parapsispress.com, where I review indie sci-fi and fantasy books. Welcome back to our book club. Today we're doing something a bit different. We are picking up a classic. We're reading Starship Troopers by Robert A. Heinlein. With me today is Michael Kane, author of After Moses, Patrick from Cave to the Cross, The Free Narnian, and Hannah. Thank you guys for joining me.
Thank you.
Should we just get a read on people? I'm assuming most people liked it here.
Okay, I'll go first. I'll just do the first toss out. I read a lot. I read more sci-fi than fantasy growing up because my grandfather loved sci-fi, and that made my mother really love sci-fi. And so most of what I read is as a teen were the things that my mom directed me. I was, oh, this is good. So it was mostly older stuff, right? But somehow I totally missed Heinlein, and I have no idea how that happened. If she just missed Heinlein or what. But so this has been on my list. And then Narnian always talks it up on Twitter. And I promised him a number of months ago to read it. And so this was a good excuse to do it. And yeah, it totally deserves its reputation. Like it's really good. There's just so much stuff that you're like, oh, this is where this sci-fi trope originates. Oh, okay. So yeah, I had a great time reading it. And yeah, it's meaty. It's meaty and has all sorts of stuff. So I have no idea where this conversation is going to take us. But two thumbs up for me for filling a gap in my education. I have no idea how it was a gap.
That's how I feel as well. This is my first time reading it, and it that's what it feels like, filling in a gap. Like I've been aware. I mean, it's had a cultural impact, right? I read more of the fantasy side, so I missed this one completely. I missed the movie. Oh, I watched that yesterday for the first time.
Oh.
But I read the book first.
I came at the opposite way. Back in 1997, I had a friend whose stepdad was super cool and let us watch movies we weren't supposed to, but I was definitely old enough for, whether my parents believed me or not. So then, of course, I got the novelization, the cover for the book, and I read it, and I went, wait, where's all the fun stuff in it? And then and then there was something kind of niggling at me where it was like, well, this is still pretty good, but man, there's just mostly it's the training part, and I don't really like that. So I gave it a B-, and then moved on, and then knew that I had to pick it up one day. So this was my excuse. And now I can say, looking back at the movie, and this is my only one mention that I'm going to do of the movie, is that was a perfect interpretation of what someone can do with a book that builds on that world and still is within it. So I think it's a perfect movie that encapsulates all the pieces of the book, but I do, as an older person now, really like the book.
So my experience with the book was a little bit roundabout. I was actually familiar with the board game that was like printed back in the 70s first.
Oh.
And
So you saw the
Wow.
skinnies.
yes, I saw the skinnies, I saw
So-
the power armor.
Okay, so was this actually a board game, or was this that like tabletop war game?
So this is I can share pictures in our Discord later. It's a board game. It's
Okay.
played on a hex board with little like punch out pieces like you
Okay,
have
that's
for
the one I'm thinking about.
yeah, for games like Advanced Squad Leader. I think it's made by the same company actually. But so I knew it from that first, and then on the box it says based on the novel, and so that's why I got interested in the novel. And in the rules and stuff, it says like, you know, if you want to learn more about the world and the society that Starship Troopers takes place, read the novel. And so that I went into the book from that, and I was very impressed with it. I think I read it at probably exactly the right age. I was probably like 13. And I really enjoyed it. I thought, again, because I was already familiar at that age with like the things that Starship Troopers had inspired, like movies like Aliens or video games like Halo. And so I really liked it, and I've reread it many times over the years, and I've always had a little bit different impression, or a little bit different things that stand out to me every time I've reread it at like different stages in my life so far. So I was very happy to have an excuse to revisit it.
Well, I have mixed feelings about it. So, sorry. So I've been trying to read some of the more classic science fiction books too. I grew up reading more fantasy than science fiction. And I really like his writing. I've just learned that I don't really care about military maneuvers or things like that. So, I mean, I think it's a great book. Like from an objective standpoint, I like his writing. I like the way he lays out the story. I think it was just the subject matter maybe that wasn't super interesting to me, which is fine. I'm glad I read it.
And it was obviously much more into the military structure and hierarchy and training than I was expecting going into it. I the last couple of years, it's become a about an every 6 months internet debate comes up about Starship Troopers and the movie and all this stuff. So I've kind of become a little more aware of it over the last couple of years, that it's was a little more philosophically oriented than you might expect. And so I was going into it expecting that, but I wasn't quite expecting so much of a complete exploration of this fictional military and this system and the government that would be required to support this idealized infantry of tomorrow, is really what it seems like he was most exploring. And I wasn't quite expecting it to be that military heavy.
It's kind of funny. A lot of people who like pulpier sci-fi fantasy would probably fault him if he was an indie author for doing too much world building.
Fair.
But yeah, no, it's backwards. This should be the lore companion piece to the game, right? Because it's just all.
So this is the Cimmerillion. I gotcha. Okay.
Yes, yeah. Robert Heinlein himself signed off on the board game, so I at least consider it, in my opinion, it's if not canonical, canonical in its own right.
Well, and part of part of it is that you could almost consider it a milieu novel, which is it's an ugly French word that I always have to look up how to pronounce it every time I'm going to be saying it, because it doesn't look like it's said at all. But it's basically the setting is first over character or plot. It is an exploration of a setting more than it is about, certainly more than it's about characters, and certainly more than it's about plot, because there's no resolution of plot, really. There is, it resolves, the book resolves, and you feel comfortable because you've learned everything you're supposed to know, and it's looking on towards the future, and that is resolution, because you fully finished exploring the setting
in 2 chapters
of the book. right. But yeah, it's like I said, it really would be a milieu novel, because it's not about characters.
I in preparing for tonight, I found George Lucas had a term that he used for his first movie, THX 1138, where he called it the documentary from the future, because it was about the setting of this possible science fiction futuristic city more than it was necessarily about a plot. And I think like Starship Troopers is almost like it's a memoir from the future, right? It's the writings of this soldier that hasn't happened yet, where future events are being told to us as if they're in the past, except for the epilogue chapter, which is written in the present tense. But I get that feeling a lot about it, especially with a lot of memoirs do go into milieu like that, or they do brush over things, right? Where he starts talking about the technicalities of power armor, and he says, well, I'm not going to really describe it because it's been photographed so many times, right? That is for the benefit of the people possibly reading this within the diegetic world of Starship Troopers, right? That they don't need a description because they've seen it before, even though, of course, we haven't.
All right. Should we dive in? Do you guys want to do it chapter by chapter or by section or topic?
I guess we kind of had it planned around like 3 parts, right? Like
Yeah.
recruit, that kind of is a little bit nebulous in the middle part, but then officers training, right, is kind of what
yeah, that was kind of what I was saying. Is there's like
Yeah.
there's basic, there's career, and then there's officer.
Yeah,
You can kind of split up.
yeah, that's a good way of looking at it, I think.
It's almost like the growth of a child from infancy to adulthood.
So the story starts with chapter 1, and it's actually kind of the part of the third or the second part, right? Because it's
Right. It's kind of starting in progress.
Yeah,
I think that isn't that Operation Bug House. Isn't that part of it, or is that a different?
no, Operation Bughouse is the first battle of Clendathu. That happens later on. The first chapter is in media res. It's a raid on the Skinny colony.
So where does that
Right.
happen relative to everything else?
That
Fairly
happens,
early in his career.
Yeah, that happens after Operation Bughouse for Johnny Rico.
After?
Yes.
Okay.
So one really funny thing too.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
So one really funny thing about the way that the book sets up, because we've got this in media res starting, and then it rolls back to recruitment and stuff like that. How long did it take y'all to figure out where he was from on Earth? Did you ever figure out where he was from?
They mentions Buenos Aires like later.
But that's
so not quite the middle.
But it's not that. It's not
No,
that
but
though. It's not,
he says I'm not from BA.
right.
Right. He
You know-
says that right because he has kind of a blasé emotional reaction to it because he's not from there.
So there's a romance language link, right? There's definitely some Spanish stuff mixed in. He's from the Philippines. Because he talks at one point about his falling in and talking Tagalog, I think, with his parents, which is a Spanish kind of it's a Philippines. I think it's Tagalog, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes,
and
yeah.
he also references a Filipino military hero.
Yes, yeah. Which I
And,
thought that
yeah.
was so interesting that I finally figured it out, because I was like, okay, where is this guy from? and there's just little clues spread through the whole novel, and it never tells you.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I don't
Tagalog,
think
not
I
Tagalog,
I
I'm
didn't
sorry.
figure it out until he basically says it in the end.
Yeah.
Because his parents refer to him in a Spanish name, but I mean that could be several countries, right? And I was guessing until
and the Spanish, of course, is because the Philippines had history of Spanish colonization. So anyway, little detail thing I appreciated from a writing aspect of, he just never tells you, but it's still there to find. I mean, he was clearly a great writer. I mean,
His character matters so little that we don't need to know anything about him.
Don't need to.
Well, because
it's terrible.
The Terran Federation, right, is basically just a super America anyway, right? Where everyone speaks English, and so it's not terribly important your national origin, although people still do identify themselves by their nationality. As there's several people, right, who they have like typical names, and they do I think actually in that area conversation where we figure out that he's from the Philippines, he's talking to a guy who's Brazilian. I think
so. It's interesting. A lot of people point to that as being a modern, currently politically correct viewpoint that he had, to have this character who wasn't white. But it's interesting to make the distinction that in his visualization of a post-racist society, right, where everybody can become citizens, can have these officer positions or whatever, everybody still maintains their ethnicity, their culture, their individuality for their groups, you know.
And
It's
religion.
not, yep, and religion, yeah. I think they talk about that too, yeah. It's not just a giant homogenous melting pot.
You find that pretty commonly, I think, in near future sci-fi. You know, stuff that's set in the next 200 or 300 years, partially because I think sci-fi authors enjoy playing with, you know, showing Americans 200 years from now or showing the British 200 years from now. You know, I do that. You know, it gives you an anchoring to the real world to have a level of diversity of where people are coming from, but it also connects back to things that people actually know. You know,
The novel was originally written, I think, 1959. And so I can't help but feel like there's a little playfulness with so the Korean War is mentioned several times or alluded to several
Right.
times.
Yeah.
But I can't help but feel that there's a little bit of playfulness in with World War II in that several of the people who are given names in when he first arrives at Camp Arthur Curry, there are 2 Germans and 1 Japanese guy, and the Japanese guy is even given, but because he knows judo, he's given a kind of like a respectful position to train. And I can't help but that was like this probably at the time a very big progressive signal, right? That we've moved on from the wounds of the last World War.
And what's funny is that that's something that someone who is very progressive would probably find offensive now. That you have the token Japanese who happens to be a judo guy, and right,
Yeah,
it's like
probably.
never chase that approval. It's always going to date you eventually.
If there's one thing I know about Heinlein, it's that he's always chasing the approval of the in crowd. So.
Wasn't Sulu like that in Star Trek? Didn't he know martial arts too? Or
he knew how to sword fight.
okay,
Yeah.
I mean, that was the trope. That was the sort of trope you'd see all the way through the 90s, though, of the one Japanese or Asian character, you know, would be the karate one. You know, that lasted through the 90s. And then everybody decided all at once not to do that ever again.
I think at the end, in the final chapter, his I forget the rank, but I know his father is his sergeant because Rico himself becomes the lieutenant.
Right.
But someone else, one of his section leaders is Native American. And in the text, right, Rico refers to him, or he says something that he has like the same facial expression as one of his scalp hunting ancestors. Like, oh, hello, 1959, right?
Wow.
You know, I read right past that, but now that you say it, I remember it.
This is the world we could have had. I'm just saying.
We could have had power suits.
Well,
and
no character.
And politically incorrect.
Thanks, LBJ.
And you know why it didn't happen? Because everybody stopped spanking their children. That's where our timeline diverges from Starship Troopers, people. For anyone watching this, there's an aside where it's what there's this character he goes back and forth with kind of some flashbacks that was a high school teacher that what was the name of the class, Narnian?
History,
moral
moral philosophy.
Oh yeah.
Right. And this can only be taught by a citizen, and a citizen has to have served in the military. You know, just for anyone catching along.
Well,
and so this was a veteran.
sorry to interrupt, not necessarily the military. There
Right,
are
'cause-
people whose terms of service are completed doing hard labor
Okay.
or research, or that, right? If they're it's usually the military, but not
It seems like
necessarily.
the route open to most people is the military. Then, just
Yes.
to put it simply. Okay, so
Yeah.
this was this veteran teacher, and there's kind of some flashbacks to this history of moral philosophy. Was that it?
History and moral philosophy.
History and moral philosophy. And there's this one chapter where a significant part of it, and I'll admit that this is the only part that I actually thought went a little long for my taste, because I knew where he was going, and I thought he made his point 5 times over before he got there. He could have been okay making it 3 times. This was the only place that I started going, okay, let's continue on. But he's oh man. This is something I should have written some notes on. But basically, the famous part about this, and I've seen this quote before, is that there are no juvenile delinquents.
Mhm.
Is the main quote.
This
Right.
this one
And-
is in chapter 8, the one about spanking, if that's where you're going with this.
Yeah. And oh goodness, I got to see if I can think of how to reconstruct this. Someone help me here.
Well, the flashback. So what the context in the plot is that, right? Some veteran dropped out and he committed a murder, and he's going to be punished with the death penalty.
Right.
Not just any murder, a murder of a little girl.
Yes.
Small child, yeah.
And
And it's
so,
insinuated that this is very, very rare in this time.
Right.
In this time in society.
Okay.
But the point is that it's actually right. So he goes into kind of my own thought on this, because there are several asides and tangents like this throughout the narrative, and I
Yeah.
know a lot of people kind of get excited about the talk about spanking, and that even adult criminals are punished corporeally through floggings in this society and stuff, because those are like controversial things that we could talk about now, like in the real world. But there are several fun sci-fi asides too that I could talk about a little bit later. I don't want to get too off the topic at hand. But there are several asides, and I think all of them just serve to kind of inform us what kind of society this is that produces the soldiers that we see in Starship Troopers. But anyway, yeah, the flashback is that his teacher in high school is explaining to the class why their society has kind of the punitive system that they do for criminals, and why it's rooted at base in that a parent can spank a misbehaving child, and it's framed through kind of an interesting approach to psychology, right? Because it's what is it he says, that right, that man has no moral instinct. I'm paraphrasing. Man has no moral instinct but to survive at an individual level, and so he has to have a higher moral sense instilled into him, and physical pain is the most essential and basic way in order to get someone out of the mode of just their own primal instinct to individually thrive and submit others to themselves rather than cooperating with others.
Yeah,
And the
he talked-
insinuation is that by the 80s or 90s, there was mass societal chaos and falling apart. And he was talking about how it was dangerous to go to parks. And of course, I'm just sitting there,
Yes.
kind of thinking about our world.
Yes, we're one of the.
Go ahead.
Oh, so, yeah, well, first of all, I think it's wonderful how many characters would they go golly, because that's of course how people will speak in the future, right? They say golly gee,
Yep.
where a student goes, well, God, you're telling me that in the past people couldn't go to parks at night? How could they live like that, right? Like it's just the idea of like there being crime in urban or suburban living is like unthinkable to them.
But it wraps back around to the point being made was this breakdown of the instilling of a
Virtue.
Virtue,
Mhm.
right. At any level, they basically, he's saying the parents didn't spank their kids and they grew up to be,
He doesn't call it
murderers in the
virtue
parks.
though. He calls it
Correct.
duty.
Correct.
He
Right. Or like a moral sensibility.
Right.
yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
I'm talking when he talks about delinquency, like
Yeah.
duty is a virtue based thing, and so to expect a juvenile to have the virtue of doing what they're supposed to be, as in not thinking outside of themselves. That's not what juveniles do, and so the parents are supposed to be that first line of defense between their problem child, which all children are problem children, and all of society.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, we could have
So it's
been
fun.
this
There's
society. I'm just saying.
if we'd spanked our kids in the 60s.
If we would have, Katie would not have to do homeschool your children tweets so often. But here we are.
That's a funny thing. Something I wondered about in this read through is that I was curious to think. I wonder if in the Terran Federation there is homeschooling.
So I wondered if the moral philosophy class is almost a funnel to identify good prospects for soldiers. It's
think
never
that's
really pushed
implied.
because like Rico does it for a girl almost on a dare, so it might not be the best one. But the fact that that Du Bois comes up again and again seems to be an interesting connection, that it's not just that one moment and then dropped, that he continues through the story.
I agree. I think it's implied that he is doing that, but something that Rico's dad says. But the fact that he had such a huge impact, and his letter to Rico really makes it seem like he thought that Rico was going to be one of these people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's an interesting thought. I got the impression this time, and I made a note of it, that it doesn't seem to be that it's necessarily taught everywhere, because when he's an officer candidacy school or
Right.
whatever they call
Right.
it, right?
Yeah.
That somewhat one of the instructors makes a comment, or maybe it's a little bit earlier, that he asks like the cadets, did you have history and moral philosophy in your school? The implication being that perhaps it is not taught everywhere, or maybe if someone was
That's a good point.
homeschooled then they weren't taught it, right? Or
Yeah.
They talk at one point that the percentage of veterans or citizens vary drastically. Like there was some places it was almost as high as 50%, and other places it was very few.
yes, on Earth,
So
and
correct.
that in the colonies too, that there's a discrepancy, that more colonials go for citizenship than people on Earth. That's fun. See, I love all of those little possible kind of pseudo sociological tidbits. Or like Rico has this wonderful comment where he says people don't really believe in other planets until their first time out, meaning into space. And I thought that's just great, because like you think about it, like, yeah, it seems like something someone would say in a spacefaring society, right? That feels like that would be
Well,
like a little colloquialism.
and that's an extrapolation of how people operate really now too. It's like, until you've been to another country, you can imagine that France exists, right? But until you've been outside of the country, you start to really see how alien, even just stepping across the border into Mexico, you're like, oh, this is a really different place.
Mhm.
The world is very much bigger and stranger than I ever imagined it could be. So
Mhm.
it's that same very human thing blown up into the future, and on a much more alien scale, obviously.
And then, of course, if you look at the history of Rome, the colonies, the people that Rome conquered wanted citizenship. A lot of times they would almost pick fights with the Roman legions so that they could be conquered by them and then be citizens under Rome for the protection of everything that type of protection got you. And ultimately, because Rome took in so many people, they eventually starved themselves to death. and other things, which we won't get in that big old conversation of why Rome fell or when. But here they're using capitalism to weed that problem out because there's a limit on the number of people they take in, and it's virtue based, as in earned.
I mean, and that's probably the big, really interesting philosophical question of the book. And, and you'll always there's this thing where you see people always going, "Oh, Heinlein is this, this is exactly what he believed and wanted." And I don't think that's always the case, right? I think some of this is clearly a fictional world, although I do think there are certain values that he obviously is putting his stamp of endorsement on. I don't think it's universal, but the book's approach to suffrage, we're used to this idea of basically universal suffrage here in the US. We're a century and some odd change into that. And, you start to hear rumblings and questions and people talking about these days. Well, is that really the best thing? Is it really working? And so that makes Starship Troopers part of that interesting discourse that comes up with this sci-fi book from the 1950s that says, well, maybe having citizenship cost you something has value, and no, this isn't quite the exact society I want to live in, but it does bring up questions in very interesting ways of saying, well, what is the value of being a citizen? What is your franchise worth?
I have read that Heinlein himself said that it is not his actual blueprint for society.
I think that's pretty clear, but I feel like sometimes people frame the book that way, and I'm like,
they do. A lot of people do. I think it's just it's just to raise questions, right, and to get you thinking, right, and looking at things a little bit differently. But I think right, like Starship Troopers, right. I mean, it makes sense that the society of the future would feel pretty alien to us, just like a society in the far past would feel pretty alien to us, right? Like people live differently, right? And they think about things differently. And I think that's just kind of part of the fun of it and the immersion of it, and how this kind of very strange thing, right? That, like I said, it's the memoir from the future, right? There were things that haven't happened are in the past as you read it, and it makes the whole thing fun. It wouldn't be as fun if it wasn't so strange.
That is one of the chief values of both fantasy and sci-fi is escapism, and there's different kinds of escapism, right? There's the Tolkienian escapism, which is looking for that hope and consolation, but one of the sci-fi offers this other form of escapism, which is this: what if, stop and think about this with me, and put you in this place and think about it. And that's one of the cool things that sci-fi offers, and I do think Starship Troopers does a fabulous job of it, especially because it is so focused on the setting and wants you to think about this time and this place, and the value system, and their military, and the glory of the infantry and all that. So
well, and I think to compare it to the movie, and I won't do this too much, but like Heinlein is saying, what if this situation, and how could that work, right?
Right.
In what situation would it work?
Right.
Whereas the movie is sort of saying, here's this situation and it would not work. Right? Like, people in the movie like are just incompetent, like seriously incompetent. There aren't people like that in the book, right? Like the people who are not doing their job get punished right away. Sorry, there's a spider right in front of my mic.
How it's a arachnid agent.
I think if we were to have this type of book today, it would probably lend itself to what we would think is too much preaching. But at the same time, I think he's quite reserved in that he doesn't spill everything. Like for as much as citizenry and his importance of the vote is, he doesn't then go into further detail of it. He kind of just
Right.
leaves it at that,
Mhm.
maybe the base level, or maybe the I would mix my metaphors if I went, but it's just that top layer of it. But it's not like, oh, people who go vote are like awed by people as they walk before them with the ballot in their hand as they cast it, because that person has earned the right to say in the colonies, or in the government, or something. There's
He
something
says
about that
a
power.
lot with a few words.
Yeah.
He's
So
able to imply an awful lot without really diving into it, and that's the mark of a good writer. That's what I was
and
talking about. The writing is brilliant.
I know, Katie, that you started chapter 1 and we haven't gotten past there. So if it's okay, I'd like to refer to another chapter where where the person hit the Zin and got drummed out, and it was like he just left, and he can't be a citizen ever again. And like there's something about the weight, the quiet weight of that peak moment of just, and he could never be a citizen ever again, no matter how hard he tried. You're like, at least for me, I said, I don't understand everything that citizenship is, but I realize this is a heavy portion right here. So that was a neat feeling to get for so little information.
Mm-hmm.
So when I read that scene, my daughter does gymnastics, and I was at gymnastics, and I was reading that really intense scene. So when the scene ended, I looked up suddenly, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm at gymnastics!" And it was fine,
Escapism.
but it was yes, and it had filled me with so much dread. I had to reorient where I was. And
I will have to say that the whole
intense.
I guess they go through like a field court martial sort of situation, right? With this recruit has struck this instructor, not in a training situation, but has gotten mad. And this just goes into like this emergency court martial, and there's people being brought in, and you just know that this kid is going to get hung.
And he doesn't even know
like
it.
You're like, oh, this kid is going to get hung, and it doesn't happen. And there's like this a little bit of this shift in the story from that point, because you've had all of this prep of martial punishment, or corporal, sorry, I should say, not martial. But there is, you can get beaten for committing crimes and beaten in the military and all this stuff. You're like, this kid is gonna get hung for doing this. I mean, you are absolutely sure, and then it doesn't happen. And then from that, you get in more of this understanding that they're very happy to let people wash out of the military, right? Because
right before a drop, you can say no, thank you, and it's a handshake. You get your pay, and
you walk away.
No one says, no one, not even your fellow compatriots are going to say anything.
Now, in this case, there was a little bit of mercy too, because in a different situation, it does imply that he could have gotten hung, he could have gotten the death penalty, but that they really just were trying to avoid it, and it happened in a situation that they could get around it.
But I think
it
was because of what Zin didn't, or what he allowed to happen, which was to him get hit. And I think that was like, if we acknowledge this as not only the recruit had the issue, I think he would have gotten hung if he didn't connect with Zin. But the fact that Zin let himself get hit was the thing that I posted right after I read that part of like, this is a mother and father talking about how they had to discipline their child, and one of them failed in it. Like this is my fault, that they shouldn't have been there. And the mother or the father, depending on how you want to read it, Zin was the father for me. The mother who gave clemency a little bit was like, no, you're right, you shouldn't have done that. So it was the whole thing, like that to me was after the, you're not going to get hung 10 lashes or 5 lashes or whatever it was the more intense part, because you could feel the dread coming off those two people of like, we both messed up. Yep, absolutely. How could you let this happen? I know I'm completely in the wrong. Such an amazing little scene, and no bugs around, no power armor, just two people having a conversation overheard of.
And where that feeds back into the overall theme, when I start talking about how you start realizing that they're not just happy to hang these people, is this Federation isn't as bloodthirsty as you thought going
Yeah.
into that
Mhm.
point.
Mhm,
It's that they don't want anyone in the military that isn't all in there. So they give people the chance to fail and to tap out and leave. Because for this idealized infantry, they only want the people that are absolutely temperamentally perfect and also like all in spiritually, for lack of a better thing, that they become the infantry.
Yep.
And so it's just interesting when you see that shift of going, oh, they're just going to start killing the people that aren't fit. No, they're going to just quietly send them home as best as they can in any way they can, because they don't want to kill them. They don't want them dead. They don't want them to get other people dead. They just want them gone.
Well,
So that was an
exactly.
interesting surprise that I was not expecting when we got there.
Well, and if we reflect, something that stuck out to me on this read is that, right, that you can get, when you you can get sidetracked in the asides, you say, man, this society seems to be pretty, it's not very regimented, because it's a free society, right? People can live out their lives. I think they even say, right, that personal freedoms are the highest that have in recorded history. But it does seem to be a society that does put a lot of emphasis on discipline. But when you're dealing again, right, with the main point of the book is that the infantryman of a future, like the individual soldier, is a tank wrapped in a jet plane with atomic bombs. You would want that guy to be very level-headed and professional, right? Like, you would not.
You don't want him to be eyeballing it, right?
Yeah. Or you don't want someone, who's just like wild of temperament, right? And is like just upset very easily and loses his cool, right? Like,
at one point, Rico gets lashes. I think he gets 5, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And he didn't actually hurt anybody, right? He just
no, but
in
he
training,
could have simulated, right? Caught his teammate in atomic fallout, right? Which in a real situation would have led to the guy's death or severe injury, and so that's why he got lashes.
Yeah.
He was careless in the moment, decided to cut some corners, and got caught immediately.
Yeah. And that's what you would want to happen.
Yeah. You don't want people cutting corners with nuclear weapons, right? Like.
So you will freeze on that anthill. You will freeze.
Although, as the old saying goes, almost only counts in horseshoes, hand grenades, and atom bombs. So you can cut some corners with a nuclear weapon. It's just a matter of how close you get to the enemy. You can't cut that corner when you're shooting your friendlies. That's all.
Right.
Important distinction.
Well, I think actually in the first chapter, which I guess we're still technically talking about.
Hey, all right.
Right.
We've been jumping around. We've been in 5. We've been in 8. We've been back to 3.
It's all right. This is good.
Rico, right? He when they're destroying the skinny city, which I guess we should say, right, for people, for the benefit of people watching, the skinnies are a race of humanoid aliens that are very skinny, and so the infantry just call them the skinnies. We're not actually they're not given a proper name of like who they are or what they are really.
They're the Greys. They're the aliens that abducted Betty and Barney Hill in 1947. We all know this.
Well, yeah, basically, yeah, right, yeah. They're just like, yeah, little gray alien, right? The saucer men type aliens. But yeah, they're blowing up their city, and I love that they use atomic weapons, right? Rico blows up a building, right? Building a public-looking building to him that he's like, maybe it was a temple or something. I don't know. But the fallout will keep people away from looking at it and stuff. It'll scare them all, and it's like, yeah, man, the war of the future is pretty scary, right? Like, you appreciate. I think it's good that happens at the very beginning, because that justifies everything you see them go through in training, right? That like, okay, yeah, these people, these recruits are treated very they go through a very severe regimen because they're going to be doing very intense things.
with the guy who kills the kid and they hang him, even that is filled with a lot of like gravitas, and it wasn't a we'll get justice for this. It was that dog. This was the line of, no, this is our dog, and we this is the Old Yeller incident. To spoil another classic thing that we all know by pop culture reference, there is, he's my dog, Mom. I got this. Yeah. So it, but again, like it wasn't like a joyful thing, or like that's what this person gets. It felt like a failure of that. I think they described they didn't get like fringes on their flag, or there was some like outward sign of like, he came from our unit and we share in the shame of what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's it's very important. Yeah, because like Michael said, like they're not bloodthirsty, right? No one is standing around the gallows like shrieking, right, or applauding, right? Like these are serious, sober, level-headed, solemn people who are not cavalier with life and death, right? Like it's not at all some sort of fanatical society.
Yeah, which I think shows that this isn't a society that like was bred out of the war. So if you have it like the bugs attack, and then it became this military Terran system, like you almost get that mirror universe from Star Trek of like, no, we're formed in war, and so we're that bloodthirsty one. But it seems almost like the juvenile delinquency, which is a contradiction in terms that we described, was the catalyst for the society to change. It got too big or too much of an issue that it then distilled discipline, so that when they went to war, they were a much different people who, even with the bugs destroying parts of Earth, there's no like, we're going to do this for, Buenos Aires, or whatever's happening. This is just, no, we're at war. This is who we are, and we're doing what we are. It's very disciplined. There's not that jarhead type mentality here.
Well, yes, that's true, but I think that the society formed partly from the juvenile issue and partly from just a broader breakdown, right? If you said like the
Sure.
20th century democracies, which were defeated in the Third World War, but they call it like the war against the Chinese hegemony, right? And that the Russo-Anglo-American alliance was defeated, and that's why veterans ended up taking, right? That there are all these people who were POWs, right? And the reason they kind of set up like a martial law is just because they didn't have any confidence in the civilian leadership as their home countries were falling apart, and so it was a kind of a complicated thing.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
There's a lot of moving parts to it. Yeah. But no, but like you said though, well, yeah, when the arachnids attack, and actually, if I could work in my little jab at the movie, well, not a jab at the movie, but a jab at the discourse around the movie, where I can hope that we could put to bed this idea that the arachnids are not an aggressive, invading, horrible civilization, right? That the Federation picked a fight with, right? Like that they routinely come into our solar system and blow up our cities. Right? Like these are not like good aliens, right? Like this is not.
Well, yeah, even at the beginning, the war with the skinnies is because they've allied themselves with the bugs.
Yeah. The skinnies start out as arachnid allies, right, who tell them where our home planet is. But then the Federation, in its clemency, is able to strike an alliance with the skinnies, and they become our allies against the arachnids. So right,
almost again, like a Mujahideen type deal.
One thing that I guess I was surprised by in reading the book was that for Heinlein, it's not even an issue, right? Like it doesn't matter whether we provoked them first or like it doesn't matter, because to him the theory that he's positing is that morality is based on survival. And so it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter if we kill all of the bugs. If we completely genocide them and it was as long as it was justified with our survival, then then he would consider it a moral.
This makes me feel more too that Orson Scott Card is a little bit more in discourse with Starship Troopers in Ender's Game.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Have you read Ender's Game, Katie?
Yes, I've
Okay.
read it a couple times, I think.
Okay.
But
Has everybody
I've
read
never
Ender's
read
Game?
this.
I have not.
Oh, okay. You do have to read at least Ender's Game. It's excellent.
You don't have to bother with the sequels.
Do you know the gist? Oh, Speaker for the Dead is excellent. And then you can stop. Speaker for the Dead is a masterpiece.
So boring.
Anyway, do you know the gist of Ender's Game?
Gotta read Shadows.
Yes, I do. I know the gist of Ender's Game. That yes.
Do you know what like the spoiler is?
Is it the spoiler? I think I know.
Spoiler warning, people! If you want to read Ender's
Spoiler
Game.
warning, not for the book we're talking about.
For a completely different book.
It's worth it.
What's the spoiler, Narnia?
Oh, I think thought he was playing a simulation that turned out to be a real war where he destroys an alien civilization. Is that right? Okay.
Yes. And they are a colony bug type species too.
Oh, okay.
I think they have the nickname the buggers, but they're formics, which relates to ants. I think is I forget how that Latin wise relates, but the thing is that go ahead.
So in Card's like imagination of this type of conflict, the brain bugs or the queens in his didn't realize that humans were all individuals. So like
so they thought you could slaughter all the drones and you weren't hurting anyone really.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't picture anything else. And so the next book, really, Speaker for the Dead, which I really think is brilliant, and Orson Scott Card basically says that that's the book he wanted to write, and he had to write Ender's Game. Part of it is that
just along the way.
Yeah.
Why does this happen to authors?
Ender finds, he finds the basically a queen's egg and keeps it with him. And so she can talk to him like telepathically, and that she's going to hatch when the time is right. And so he's carrying along this vestige of this other civilization that he destroyed, not through any conscious choice of his. And okay, here was the link I was going back to, and I was trying to figure it out. But it's interesting because the conversations that Ender and the Queen have over the next book or two is basically the Queen doesn't blame him at all. The Queen is like, yeah, you did the right thing. It doesn't matter that you didn't want to. That was the correct thing because we you didn't know. You thought we were coming to kill you all. Mm-hmm. Right? And Ender is fighting against this with this completely different set of morality. It says, no, this was a really evil thing. Even if I didn't consciously do it, this was a horribly evil thing that was still perpetrated through my hands. So there's a little bit of that same kind of tension, but just explored differently in Ender's Game that, now having read this, I'm like, okay, there's more of a direct dialogue with Starship Troopers and Ender's Game than I realized.
Mm. Well, yeah, I think Rico in Starship Troopers, right? Well, for him, of course, this is an infantryman, and it's not for him to decide whether or not what the Federation's policy towards the Arachnids should be. But he does seem to acknowledge the possibility that they could surrender or that some sort of peace could be reached without one civilization completely destroying the other.
Yeah, the brain bug capture. Yeah.
Well, that's part of the point, right? To learn, we need to figure out, do we have to kill them all, or do we not have to, right? Like, can they be dealt with? And I would venture to guess that they can, because they had allies in the Skinnies, so obviously they can communicate.
Well, and they captured soldiers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which if they were just, well, we have our workers and they don't even attack. So, they're in the mix of all these workers and they're like, don't fire, these are just workers. There's maybe a few warriors hiding out, but I don't see them yet. But we know that there's hundreds, maybe thousands of captured people. And you don't capture the bugs don't capture in any other world, but in here you do.
Right. Yeah. They capture our soldiers. They do not spare our civilians though, which is part of the. I think
Right.
was it Rico's father. Yeah, he makes a comment right about how he's talking to someone and he revealed to them, oh, this person, they were on a colony that got taken by the arachnids,
Right.
and she goes, oh, but she's a civilian, so right, and the implication is like, yeah, the arachnids don't really care,
Yeah.
right? It's not in their policy. They don't give us honorable terms of occupation. They just kind of wipe out, I guess, from their perspective, all of the meddlesome bipeds interfering with their intergalactic expansion.
Yeah, there's more Ender's Game philosophy related to that too. There really is a lot of interrelation, especially in that second book.
Yeah, I think you would like that.
Yeah, you should at least read Ender's Game, Narnia.
All
There's a big question in the second book where the philosophical approach on something is how degrees of otherness, basically. And so, and they use he goes back and he applies this Norse terminology, and I can't remember it now, but there's basically there are the people in the same county in the next town over that they're not your brother, but they're very near. There's you don't need translation, you don't need anything. And then there's the person in the next the next state over, the next province over, that become more foreign to you, right? And he goes through all these different things. Does there become a degree of otherness, especially when we start talking about non-human species, at which point there can be no understanding or communication, right? Do you reach the point of, to our human perspective, are they no different than animals? Even if on some level they aren't, we can't communicate with them in any way. And how are we supposed to respond to something that may be sentient, but which we can have no discourse with?
And that's when Mormon theology comes into play. And then...
it does some. Yeah, it does.
No, it totally does.
Absolutely. And it's interesting seeing how Card's Mormonism plays out in that. But it is still it does raise some fabulously fun sci-fi questions. But the second one is really good. 3 and 4 I don't care for as much, but 2 is good, Katie. I will stand on that.
It's like he had things that he wanted to say, but he didn't have anything that should happen. And so he wrote a second book.
No, so much happens in that second book. There's a second
I totally see both
contact
sides of this perspective, and I love
with
it.
little pig people in the woods that convert to Catholicism. The aliens convert to Catholicism. How interesting is that, Katie?
Oh, it's fascinating. It's still part of what he wanted to say.
And then they kill somebody, and then the question is, why did the little Catholic aliens kill somebody? It's such a good mystery.
Back to Starship Troopers.
Hey, something I want to ask you, Narnia. What are some of the little sci-fi things you want to talk about? Some of the interesting sci-fi
good.
things.
I'm glad you asked that.
I want to know those things.
I have a list. Well, I mentioned one of them, which was the kind of like the idea that there's like these sociological differences between people who haven't been out into space and people who have, and colonists versus people native to Terra, and all kinds of great things. Like one of the great asides where there's several pages where Rico, when he's on leave at Sanctuary and he runs into this guy that's like a colonial researcher, and this is great. This is wonderful because I don't know. For me, I actually have in real life had the pleasure of hearing war stories from real veterans. And they all have stories like this where they're on leave or they're at base or something, and they come across just some weird guy that just has to tell them about their ideas about the world. And Rico runs into this guy. It's just perfect, who starts telling him about how the people living on this colony world need to be irradiated more so that they can keep up with the rate of evolution with humans native to
I
Earth.
remember that, yeah.
All right, right? It's like this total thing, and Rico is just like, what? Why are you telling me this? And it's just it's such a wonderful little aside, right? Because I guess, yeah, there probably would be someone thinking that, right, in this world, right? It was like deeply concerned with, yeah, man, we need to like set off a dirty bomb on this planet so that there's enough radiation in everyone's DNA. And then there's other great things like the Neo dogs.
Oh yeah.
How can you not love the Neo dogs? The poor Neo dogs on Operation Bughouse.
Again, I love how most of it's insinuated, right? It's more in the insinuation rather than actually just sitting down and really telling you about Neo dogs.
Right. You get a fun little detail there where, because he his when he's being recruited, his psychological evaluation guy was part of a Neo dog team, and so he knows like the dogs have a specific dialect because of their mouths can't form certain sounds, and that's just fun, right? You gotta love that attention to detail. Yeah, right.
It's like Scooby Doo.
Yeah, it sounds pretty rough to me.
It's like Scooby Doo.
But yes, they have to be trained to not panic when they see arachnid warriors. Otherwise, there's tragic results.
Who knew that dogs didn't like spiders?
Oh, and another thing. Okay, this in my notes I have that hypnotherapy comes up a lot.
Yeah.
Soldiers get hypnotized. They get hypnotized with their orders, right? They get hypnotized.
Doesn't that imply that they don't fear like an outside rogue soldier coming into play, and like you could just put the entire platoon to sleep? There's no, they just know that, and as
well, they've already weeded out every possible problem soldier.
Yeah, well, yeah. There's no Goldeneye, in here.
Or
yeah,
like
that I will say the sleep scene made me laugh out loud.
It was funny.
Look at your watch.
Oh,
it's been 3 hours.
It's like, ready to continue the argument. I'm not going to go to sleep.
It's like sometimes with your own kids, it's like, I'm not tired. Yes, you are. No, I'm.
Or how Rico's father tells him, "I've been seeing a hypnotherapist. I bet you didn't know that." And it's but for actual psychoanalytical therapy. And because he says like, yeah, and he helped me realize that I'm not satisfied with my life, and that's why I want a buck to go into the mobile infantry. And I don't know, that feels kind of 50s to me. This fascination with hypnosis, right? Like this is a very futuristic, way of approaching the human mind.
You get a lot of that from that era of sci-fi, hypno stuff and psychic stuff, and every military has its psychic squads and things like that. You get a lot of that from 50s sci-fi.
But that's also like interesting to kind of tie it back to the plot. There is he doesn't really care about his father again until you find him that he's joined up, and
which is definitely a surprise. I was
but it's that tie-in of like, all right, you're on. You're as long as you finish your tour, one way or the other, you're a citizen. And it's only then his father was like he ran a successful business. He divested interest well. Johnny can go back at any time and take part in it too. So he's like left him a nest egg, and yet he's unfulfilled because he's not a citizen. Like his his wife, Johnny's mother, has died, and there's still that part of him that goes, but I can be more. I can do more. Where like for us, running a successful business and leaving something that the government can't touch to your progeny is always the goal. And he should have had it all. And instead of turning to drugs, he turned to the military. So
it is an interesting idea, right? And it's interesting that Rico's father ends up serving under him, that there's kind of an interesting, I guess, subversion, if you will, right, of kind of a typical father-son relationship, right?
Which is interesting when Zin fits underneath them too.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Two fathers of the story coming together, tying it up in the bow.
It's
yeah.
interesting. So speaking of his father, right? That kind of ties again into the spirit of the infantry, let's say, because they clearly didn't quite get along, and as soon as they meet back up, at that point, they are brothers basically, because they've both survived that basic. They've both survived the same thing. They're
Mhm.
both part of the infantry, so there can be no division between them. You know, it's kind of the feeling you get, which is just
Right.
I'm just kind of like, oh, but then within the logic of the story, I'm like, yeah, exactly. That's what the purpose of the training and the basic was to forge this ideal infantry. So of course they'd be able to weather, including with the inverted authority structure of the son being the higher rank.
But at the
Which I
same
don't
time,
even know.
they're willing to kind of almost forego the orders because there's still that closeness. It's not like, oh, we're suddenly a new entity because we're brothers at arms. There's still a father-son relationship aspect
Yeah,
to it
yeah.
that's not lost,
Right.
which is
No, they
very
still
on
call
point
each
with
other
everything.
by like pet names or
Yeah.
Kiss
right.
each other and stuff like that. Yeah.
I think
What's
it's
weird?
important. This is the very end of the book when he is a lieutenant, right? And his father is a sergeant.
Yeah.
Well, the sergeant's
Corporal?
under him.
Yeah, I think he's
Yeah.
a sergeant.
Under him. He's getting the shakes before the drop, and his father touches his shoulder, and the shakes go away. Like there's still that
Yeah.
comfort, I guess.
Yeah.
I have no idea if the United States military has any sort of regulations for this, but if anything, I would suspect that they wouldn't allow a family to be directly under another family member.
Well, that
Yeah,
was
it kind of stands to reason, right?
Right,
was,
but the thing is, again, what is the purpose of the infantry is that they've created this system where that's not something they even question, but can just put the father even under the son, and no one will question that
Yeah.
there's a problem here or any
well,
impropriety.
usually it's an age thing, but like the whole thing that Saving
Correct,
Private Ryan is based on of is the Sullivan brothers who all got killed because they all wanted to stay together, and it's essentially like, well, you just now wiped out this bloodline that
Right.
had like 4 or 5 brothers in it, which was a thing that concerned people in World War I. Is like, you had this whole town attack, we threw them in no man's land, and they're all dead now. So, but at the same time, it doesn't seem like it seems like citizenship or the military duty. The duty comes first, regardless of familiarity. So if your entire line gets out, you all die as citizens, and that's a great thing for your family. And it's more than just like that honor thing. There seems to be more to it, and I'm kind of glad that he didn't go into it more. But I wonder what's there.
Yeah. I wonder, and again, it's a very utopian, benevolent understanding of human beings, because you can't help but wonder, right, us and our corruptible tendencies, that this system and this discrepancy between citizens and civilians, would not it be possible for people who are citizens to begin to view the civilian population with contempt? Right. And you get a little bit of that, not totally, but you do get a little, because they do acknowledge that there is a vast difference, right? I think even like Rico or someone said, right, they even make like passing remark that man, that like he can't even like really see himself with a woman who's a civilian past a certain point anymore, that he would have to go with a woman that was like a pilot or something, because it's just too different. We're just too different. And so there is a little bit of a caste at play there, a little bit of a caste dynamic.
When they're at the not West Point doing officer training, and I forget who the commander is, but he motions to his female civilian as like being the person who knows the most, and who, without her, I couldn't do anything.
That's
But what
true.
would happen if I were to die? What would she do? And the guy's like, well, she'd probably continue on for a little bit. He goes, no, she would do nothing because she doesn't have the authority to do anything. And it's like that, such a good stark contrast between that. But there is, they go on a bit more to explain, like, listen, you know, like good capitalists that we still are in the future, because we live in a reality. We are going based off.
This isn't Star Trek.
Exactly. We don't timey-wimey it away. We actually deal with shortages. But they talk about that. Listen, it doesn't make sense for us to put an introverted person in this, so we're gonna outsource this to civilians. But guess what? Still civilians.
Right. But it is funny, right? Because it is very much a market society. Obviously, there's private property and private wealth. The communism is treated with open contempt several times, to the
as
point.
it should be.
Where the arachnids are literally described as the only species suited to communism.
Right.
Right. So obviously, it's a very. If you like.
I wonder
that
why the
sort of
leftists
thing-
hate Heinlein.
Yeah. But but at the same time,
Aren't they the ones always identifying with the bugs? Isn't that how the meme goes?
Yeah, it's funny, right? But it's well, and that too, right? The where he goes into the moral the discrepancy, right? Where human beings are unique because where he gives the example, right, where one man goes missing and a whole town turns out to go looking for him. Whereas in arachnid society, right, if a warrior bug is wounded, well, they'll just kill it because it's a waste of resources to try to keep it going, right? They're like, if the minute you're not useful to the collective, they just dispatch you. Whereas in human society, it's a give and take, right, where everyone is ideally looking out for each other, and has regard towards the individual as being worthy of, and certainly worthy of life, and that's like the big moral difference between us and our alien competitors. And
isn't that where the line like "men are not potatoes" comes in?
yes, so yeah.
Right. Katie, I know we're only in chapter 1 heading to chapter 2, but if I could do something and ask you a very off-putting question, but as a woman, how did you take the story and I'm not saying you have to say like, oh, there were few women in the story, but what from your feminine wiles, what do you take away from this book that maybe I might have missed reading it as just dude who is sad that Casper Van Diem wasn't in here and I didn't have a shower scene that if there were a movie would include.
I don't know. I'm not like, I like setting. I think that if you're going to write sci-fi fantasy, you should have setting, because that's what makes it sci-fi fantasy. I think this is just too much setting for me. And like Hannah said, like I've enjoyed some military fantasy stuff. The one that I just reviewed, Holding the Line by Griffiths. He also wrote The Thing from HR. So I just reviewed the first book of his new series, which is this like pseudo military school. It's not like an actual military school, but they do boot campy stuff, and then another one that I'm going to be reviewing soon, which is Semper Die by Jonathan Scherger, which is Marines versus zombies.
Yeah.
So like those are great. Stuff happens. And the characters are people, that you care about. Not that I don't care about Rico. I'll say I care about him a lot more in the book than I did in the movie. But I didn't have a lot of the tension and alternating pacing that I like to have. And whether or not that's related to my gender, I don't know. But I know that a lot of guys are a lot more satisfied with simply being told a character's like emotional mental place, right? Like when Reiko's like, I was at a low point. I'm like, okay, can you elaborate? Can you give me a little bit more about that? Like, you know?
I was I've a couple days ago I was in a class talking about the application of our math curriculum from a classical point of view, and like good homeschool people, most of them are mothers, and I'm getting a majority female talking, but I'm listening to this and I go, listen, we didn't start with the philosophy of this. We didn't start with the theology of this. We just got right into how is this useful? How can I make this work? And I'm like, no, give me the theology behind this. I want the hard nosed philosophy. So I was like, this scratches this itch of like, listen, feelings aside, we all get low points. I understand that. So tell me though, what would it be like if we did spank children? You know, like there was the philosophy there, and as someone who owns a podcast that talks about philosophy, I appreciate that. So but yeah, I see the difference there.
This book definitely reminded why I've always been careful of not writing too many military men interacting with each other, because as a not military man, I would get a lot of stuff very wrong. So the few military characters there are in my series, mostly they only are seen at interacting with civilians.
I think
That's all right.
Heinlein himself was in the Navy, but
Yeah,
I
I
don't
believe
think
so,
he saw
yeah.
combat. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I have a note that I made because I thought that would be interesting. Of his, he was served in the Navy for 5 years after graduating the United States Naval Academy in 1929. So there's probably some officer s to it. His experience in the military profoundly influenced his fiction, of course, and he was medically discharged due to tuberculosis, ending what could have been a career military path.
Interesting.
Yeah, so maybe
So-
he's not a citizen in his own world.
Maybe. Well, I think if you're medically discharged, you still have the option to, right? Because I think
You're
in
you're
the
still
beginning,
honorably discharged. Yeah.
yeah, no, and when they're at Arthur Curie, there's a guy who Rico refers to as being a very old man at the age of 35, who can't physically keep up with the training, and so he's discharged, but he later sees him again as a cook on a starship, and he's still eligible for citizenship.
And he's happy because he still has that eligibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so because he was moved out of the infantry, but through no moral fault of his own, right? Not because he chose to or because of some delinquency, right? Some inappropriate action, just because he physically can't, but they still found a way for him to earn his citizenship. So it's an interesting little thing that's sandwiched in there. But yeah, I think Rico refers to him as a 35-year-old geezer.
I remember that. Yeah.
Which again, the word geezer too, right? Itself is like
I love the basic complete lack of language despite it being a military book. It's hilarious to me, right? Because it's like part of it is the time it was written, part of it is kind of, I think, just the setting that it's in, the society, right? But I just think it's funny because as a writer, one of the things we get into conversations about and arguments about on social media is how much cursing should you put in a book, right? And which is fine. I'm not going to go into my specific arguments, but if people will make the argument that certain genres is expected to have a certain amount, and one of the main ones that people talk about is military fiction, you have to have a lot of language in it. And I'm like,
nope.
This is kind of like the granddaddy military sci-fi book. And is there anything that can be considered PG language? Was there
I-
anything?
People say "aw shucks," right? They say, right, like it's very. I think
If you
right.
hadn't said anything, I wouldn't even have thought about it. But there isn't
Exactly.
anything. There's
No,
not
see,
even a
that's something I was thinking
justification
about.
for it. There's
Well,
not like a
Exactly.
Rico
Well,
does.
it's not a thing.
It is unique though within actually the diegetic world of Star, because Rico makes a comment that Zim in training never uses profanity except
Right.
for very special occasions.
And on purpose.
Yes, on with so to great effect, right? So, but it's worked into that. This is a clean cut, right, professional way
Mhm.
way of being, right, that they're trying to instill. So I would imagine that it's actually on purpose, that like an officer does not swear, or at least does not swear frequently.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and knowing my fair share of fine military people, there's not one gay joke in here. There's not one pseudo homosexuality, which I know is not the case, especially for cranny and jarheads. And so I knew this was a work of fiction, so it kept me grounded in a different world. So it was very alien.
Okay, so I think we've talked about training pretty extensively, and we've jumped around a little bit talking about some of the different topics that come up or are briefly mentioned. Is there anything you guys wanted to make sure to talk about his career portion?
You get a good bit of that. I think it's paced pretty well in the like. I hesitate to use the word slice of life or the phrase slice of life, but
Hmm.
the day to day, right, of being a Starship Trooper, where he talks about, right, when they're not fighting, right, how they divvy up responsibilities between maintaining power armor and what their break room is like, right, and
Right.
how a co-ed ship is handled. Not that there's not women in the infantry, but there are lots of women in the Navy, and how all that dynamic plays out, and how what it's like to go on leave, right, twice, right, once while in training, and then of course while he's a soldier he goes on leave to that colony planet, and kind of, just like, right, nothing goes into too much detail, but you do get a pretty good sample, right, of all the different things that are going on in this really big world.
I really liked the tone and the treatment of like sexuality, I guess, for lack of a better way to talk about it. I mean, there's no co-ed shower scenes, but like you get the distinct impression
Like
that
that's just such a deliberate thumbing at the book.
oh gosh.
It's just so deliberately thumbed at the book because
I said I wouldn't talk about the movie, but I think that is perfectly in line with what we see in Heinlein, because you have so okay, maybe not like a co-ed, but
no,
the fact
because
let me make my point.
Go ahead.
Because the discipline is there, there's no like ideal of we're going to take advantage of the situations we're in. Other than in the movie, the women take advantage of the men in there, which I don't appreciate because that's sexual harassment in that world, and I'm pretty sure that's lashes. But again, it's the outpouring of that world. If we were to go maybe 100 years in the future, that society could include women more in things other than the piloting or telling you good luck as the last thing you hear before you probably die. But that's a society that's well regulated. Is you could have co-ed showers at the time.
Well, it is a little bit of a.
My point was that there is the distinct feeling that men and women are different, and that women are attractive, and that there is a legitimate role for that attraction, even within this military situation.
Yeah.
It's not we are all interchangeable and we're no longer attracted to one another
Mhm.
because we're all professionals, you know.
Yeah, there's no GI Jane either, where you shave your head and you look kind of male and you can do the pull-ups, even though we know that you can't. But we're still gonna,
Right.
once a infantry person, always an infantry person, no matter what. Not really.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's worth mentioning. I mean, there's a bit of time going. Johnny Rico is certainly a bit girl crazy throughout, across stuff. I think he doesn't describe himself that way, but he almost does. Like, right, just
I
comes out and
mean,
says,
He signs
joins
up
up.
and
He signs
continues.
up because of a girl.
That-
not
that's
just
true.
not, not
I-
just because of the girl, but doesn't get out of it. There's like, well, I'm already here. I'm already pretending to sign my name. I might as well sign my name.
well, no,
And
it is
then-
funny. Carmen is an interesting bit of world building, right? Because he said, right, several times, right, that Carmen was not anyone's girl, right? She doesn't go steady with anybody. So, and this is a fun thing with the book, because Starship Troopers has a reputation of being like a very, like, reactionary power fantasy thing, but it's a very kind of free, I don't, not necessarily free love, but it's certainly more, I don't know, liberal, for lack of a better word, in its portrayal of that, right? Because he acts just totally like it's totally normal that Carmen would not go on a date with the same boy twice in a row, right? Like, that's not unusual, right? Or that's not something that is taboo or anything like that. And that's, I don't know, that's just an interesting thing that's kind of wedged in there.
But I think it's also because in this world you have a high trust society, and I mean, maybe I'm reading my own values into it, and that's blocking this, but I didn't take that as her being easy with people, and I think it's more like, well, let's get used to being around men, seeing what type of men you like, and then once you're older, or you go citizen route, or whatever it is, or you're looking for someone to be citizen like, then that's the one that you settle down with.
No,
So,
sure. No, what I meant to say was that it's not a very regimented society, right? With like where there is that autonomy, right? Where people have that individual autonomy, where they can be like that, right? It's not like this is not a society that we can infer, right? That would probably have a lot of arranged marriages or anything like that.
Right.
mm,
Yeah,
That's what I.
she
gotcha.
as a student has a lot of freedom and personal
Yeah,
liberty with, and
yeah. She has a lot of social
I
freedom.
would agree. She doesn't seem like someone who's sleeping around, right? Like,
Right.
she gets together with Rico, she seeks him out, she gets permission to have him over for dinner, and she kisses him goodnight, right? Like, that was the highlight of his evening. So it's not like she's someone who, that's not the impression I got either, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Like, she didn't,
Mhm.
but she does have a lot of mobility, shall we say.
Yeah. I love it when Rico lies to Ace, right? Where Ace asks him, "Do you have a girl back home?" And Johnny doesn't want to get into the weeds of saying, "Well, no," right? And so he just says, "Well, yeah, but she Dear John'd me," because Carmen writes to him as Dear John, right? Or Dear Johnny, right? So it's like that's a fib, and all right, he just tells a white lie with his friend because, like, Ace, I'm just telling Ace kind of what he wants to hear because I don't want to deal with whatever it is he's going to tell me right now.
He's writing to my heart. I like the realism of this scene.
Yeah, it's good.
'Cause I don't wanna
Yeah,
get
because he's like, Ace has something to tell me, and so I'm just gonna feed him the line so he can get to whatever it is he wants to say to me.
If I can get down and dirty with what I liked about his career, is when he's about ready to be officer in training. I think they made him like third lieutenant, which is like a fake thing. But
Mhm.
I liked seeing him try and do everything, including do the maintenance on the drop suits, on the mech armor, or the power armor.
Yeah.
I really like that about him. It's something that kind of I do when I have taken over a place in leadership, is like I've cleaned house. Like, I've literally like cleaned it and made it organized, and like put everything in order. And that's what he's trying to do with his power armor, but it's never discussed like he's got advanced medical or engineering degree in his head, or like he was really good at math or anything like that. He's just knows the armor well. He's just situated into that, and he's like, no, I'm pretty sure I can have these all up and running by the time drop comes, and he overdoes it. And so I appreciate when a character tends to write in my. I can see myself in the book. I really appreciate.
Speaking of seeing oneself in the book, and like, can we all just acknowledge how stressful I don't have enough time to sleep?
It was 20 minutes. I got 20
and
minutes.
Also, I have math homework over here. Just it's like all of my going back to school nightmares include math.
That said, I have absolutely heard from the military friends in my life about the ability to fall asleep anywhere instantly when it was time to do so, because that's the only time you have to do so. That's a real thing.
Yeah, I know he even says that, right? He's like, yeah, the average soldier, right? The average mobile infantryman doesn't concern himself too much with like the wider politics of the war. We're more concerned with when we can get sack time. That occupies much more of our minds than whatever the arachnids are thinking about anything, right?
I feel like we kind of skipped over the action stuff, like Operation Bughouse, Operation Royalty.
I mean, it's kind of
like,
okay.
That's all right. Heinlein did too. It's fine.
Look, you can,
if you want a Bughouse, it's just like this horrible disaster, right? It's like this nightmarish, right, situation where everything goes wrong. And I guess probably I had always thought this, but I didn't pick it up this last time, that's where the Arachnids got their first batch of prisoners from, was the failure of Bughouse. But that wasn't stated explicitly. I guess I just somehow that worked its way into my mind that is what happened. But we know the book ends with the impending another invasion of Clondathu, right? The Arachnid home planet, and where Rico says the mission is to get mobile infantry prisoners off the planet, because by that point they have the ability to like just destroy the planet with bombs, right? That they could just end all life on it, but they can't, as they won't, as long as there's human beings being held captive there. So
because we're better than bugs.
Yes. So I guess we can assume that eventually we do win the war, even though we're not given, we're not given the brain bug having to come on to the deck of a ship and sign the treaty of unconditional surrender or anything.
On
we're
the
not given
USS
anything.
Arizona,
Yeah, right. We're not giving anything like that. But
the book's not concerned with that.
No.
That's not a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
that's
Rico's
an important
not
thing
concerned,
to stress.
Right? When the war starts, he hardly knows, right? Like, so
well, and there's no talk about what are you going to do after the war? What happens when you get home? There's no like, well, once we defeat the bugs, then it's on to the humanoids, or whatever the next species is. It's just there.
Yeah, well, that's another thing too that I've had, like, in the Federation Oath and in a couple other bits of dialogue, they talk about non-humans that may be placed under my lawful authority, right? That's part of the oath. And they talk about allies, not just the humanoids, but just other allies, right? Because they said like why the Federation can't pull all of its military personnel to just exclusively be dedicated to defending Earth, because they have obligations to allies. So I think it's fair to say that the Federation does have, and then even Rico's father says, we have good relations with other planets, which I don't think just means human colonies, but other aliens out there. But they're just not relevant because they're either like on our side or not part of the war, right? They're just out there. I could easily see like an alien like a Vulcan, right? Something very near human being, like the Federation would probably be tolerant of that, right? Or like perhaps even have some sort of mechanism where they could be integrated into society and on some level. I just get that impression because the Federation is portrayed as being like just very pragmatic, right? And cosmopolitan in its way, right? So I don't know. That's
Yeah.
just a read I have. It's all this stuff is just implied. So right.
And on the
Here-
opposite end of the spectrum, you don't get Warhammer, for the Emperor. Like it's not
right, yeah.
we're we've always been at war. We're going to continue to be at war until the entire universe is under the loving thumb of the Emperor. Hail the Emperor.
Yeah, I think for Rico himself, right? He's career, right? So he's just gonna be in the army until he retires, whether or not there is a war, right? So like maybe he'll end up training people or something.
Well,
right?
that's my thing about citizenship is like, Johnny went in with a weird set of circumstances where he's not thinking of, running his father's company as a citizen or like what a higher aspiration. It's just I found my place. Here it is. And of course, I'm gonna tie this in with raising up of children and the whole path of life. But there's not and once I am a citizen, then I'm gonna do X after that. He's I think he's very content with retiring and dying.
Yeah. Ace had a different plan, right? Ace had because Ace is the one who encourages him to become an officer. And Ace says that he's gonna serve his term and then go, right? And he says like, I want a fat wife and a farm, and I'm gonna read about you in the news one day, right, or something like that. Right?
And I'm gonna say I knew him.
I knew him when he was just this punk, right, or whatever.
Yeah, but again, no
So-
discussion of like, and I'm gonna vote like I've never voted before, and I'm gonna usher in peace between the colonies or anything like that. So again, like this it's the aspiration of everybody who's joining, who will sit on the anthill and freeze for as long as you are and not punch your superior officer for getting on you. But it's like it's important, and Heinlein does a good job of putting the weight there without explaining it, which is admirable, I think, as an author.
Yeah, in a way, it's almost like a chivalric ideal, right? Where just being excellent, right, is its own reward.
I think that's a
right?
Bill and Ted. Just be excellent, right?
You did more than one movie reference tonight, by the way.
But I only did
that was-
1.5 troopers. Sorry.
So something. I know we're probably getting kind of near the end here, but something worth talking about of the action, let's say, Katie, is just how much other sci-fi has relied upon ideas that Starship Troopers is really the progenitor of. Now, from my reading, this is not the first powered armor. This is indeed the second. There's this other story named Armor, which comes a few years sooner, but it's not really considered the influential one that really spreads the idea, if that makes sense. So from my understanding, this is this is actually the second instance, but this is not considered influenced by Armor, and Armor isn't considered the influential one from my reading. So that's obviously a huge thing. Of course, power armor influences everything. Every mecha,
They couldn't be bothered to put it in the movie. We get those stupid helmets.
That's a
yeah,
big gripe
exactly.
of
Like I
mine.
said. So that as near as I can tell, this is the first dropping out of orbit, orbital drop pods.
Nice.
Whatever you want to call them, that's a huge staple of sci-fi.
Insectoid aliens,
right?
Yeah, the insectoid swarms. You go Ender's Game is hugely influenced by this in ways. But yeah, there's just a lot of the military sci-fi tropes. They start right here. Even the more authoritarian, militaristic government. You can look at like Halo, for instance. Halo has the UNSC, which has this authoritarian military, government. That's real common in.
I mean, Halo has a lot of DNA from Starship Troopers.
Yes. What's funny is, back to the discourse, right? the discourse around Starship Troopers from one side of the political aisle is it's a fascist work, right? which whatever. But you look at some of the stuff influenced. You look at it's almost like the UNSC and Halo is how they interpret Starship Troopers. Because it is more that government is more of something to be opposed, and there's all these human rebels too, besides the aliens and stuff like that. It's just funny seeing how that influence has spread and how people's interpretations of it have, become the thing that's spread in some cases too, rather than the actual thing.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So,
on that, of, with the arachnids particularly,
mhm,
that the arachnids, the trope I feel like that the arachnids started or at least popularized, right, of the insectoid aliens. You see in Warhammer with the Tyranids, you see with the
right,
Xenomorphs and aliens, you see with the Zerg and StarCraft that the swarm-like aliens grow everything. Everything is organic. Everything is like part of some like superorganism. The arachnids build things,
right,
man,
right.
right?
They're a
Like their
technological
spaceships,
society.
yeah, their spaceships are machines and they shoot laser guns, right? Like that is something that I really like because there's something very disturbing about that, right? Of something totally inhuman though, but it knows how to work technology, right? Like,
It's not just an anthill. It's
yeah,
an anthill with guns.
yeah, right. So you can imagine what kind of horrors their colonies must actually be like deep underground, right? That there's probably all kinds of crazy machines that they have and things, right? But yeah, they build spaceships, they build lasers, and they go around and vaporize our cities and all kinds of things like that. And yeah, there's something I feel just uniquely, again, if this were a different type of novel, it would probably go more into what the arachnids are, what they're like. But there is just something kind of right disturbing about something so far beyond the human scale, but has that intelligence that is relatable to us on that level, that they're intelligent and they build things and they manipulate the environment the way we do, right, in terms of building things and using technology. But that image, that is something that has stuck with me since a teenager, that like it just really disturbed me just to think about that concept, right? Like imagine, yeah, it's giant spider with that can travel through space on a ship that it built, right? Is
A giant spider that can cross space to come and get you.
yeah.
Or
No,
or
it
help
is.
you. Hail Mary. Hail Mary. Well, it's one of the reasons why I picked up the Chaplain's War, which is about aliens who go to war against mankind and then pretty much almost win, but then take hold of a chaplain who then they go, "Wait, you believe in a god? Tell us more," and they stop. I was like, "Oh, I really want to read this," and then the whole book has nothing to do about any religion whatsoever, and no one should read the Chaplain's War. Sorry, I'm still mad at that.
Another
A good
another
credit on that
interesting
one.
detail, science fiction detail that I saw an explanation for and read about was the women being pilots.
Wing
Right.
Commander.
Right.
Wing Commander.
Apparently this
Prince
shows up a lot in Heinlein, that the women, it's always women pilots, because apparently he was working off of research at the time that showed that women have faster reaction speeds. And apparently that is true. However, later military testing showed that despite having faster reaction speed, women's lower aggressiveness completely counters out any benefit to reaction speed when it comes to piloting an aircraft. And so, in apparently Heinlein and some other stuff in the time, there's this funny little relic of, well, they believe that in the war of the future, all the pilots will be women because they react faster. And there was, that scene in the beginning where she had to recalculate and do this, how she waited and then she still got him out, right?
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny because it's a little bit of this relic of this 1950s research, which didn't end up panning out all the way. It's like it's more than just reaction speed going into it, you know. So it's funny. It's interesting. It's a little time capsule there that is. Yeah, I hear people complaining about people that don't read sci-fi complain the weirdest things about sci-fi. Like, but once science advances and it invalidates it, why would you read it? It's like,
It's still
Oh.
cool.
Oh.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like you get all these little split off alternate futures of interesting things and ideas, and
Where
it's
people
like,
still smoke on spaceships. I have a book right up there that has it.
yes,
I love it. I was like, you would never
yes.
see this in today's but I'm reading someone who's on a spaceship smoking. Oh, so
Yeah.
good.
Or like how there's a Zoom call in Starship Troopers, right? Where when Hendrix is getting chewed out and Rico has to send a transmission to like the camp officer, he says his face flashes up on a screen, right? That's great, but there's no internet, right? And
Yeah.
other times you still read people dialing a phone, right? Or
Right.
Yeah.
they're writing things down with pens and paper. And
I love 1950s sci-fi and its understanding of computers. You know, I love it because it makes these quaint alternate realities. You're like, that is not the way that works at all. You know,
Yeah.
but oh, it's funny stuff. And then at the same time, you get, it's another reason to read Ender's Game is Orson Scott Card successfully predicts social media in the early 80s. Like exactly predicts social media, and it's like,
And trolling.
yeah,
With the brother
and
sister.
subversive social media campaigns to alter public opinion on things. So sometimes they get it right, sometimes they don't. It's both of them are very entertaining. Heinlein gets some things right, and Heinlein gets some stuff very wrong.
yeah, a fun little quirk about their society. That Rico talks about how he likes to wear earrings.
Yeah.
That's another one of those little anachronisms. Like I love how Heinlein anticipates, like, well, in the future, perhaps, right? Okay, it's possible, right, that earrings would just become part of men's fashion.
Right, because didn't that come into play with like the beatniks? Like the beatniks started wearing earrings, right? And that's like the 50s.
Did they?
I
not
think
sure.
so.
I don't know enough to say that, but I just think that's interesting.
Not that
and
old,
then,
Patrick.
Oh, sorry.
but that it amuses me. It will always amuse me to read Starship Troopers, all of this futuristic stuff, all of these, different, a society that's so different and seems so kind of far away, but that when people still say golly, I just can't get over that, and it's just so great. This little 1950, who knows? Maybe that comes back in use at some point.
This is the Fallout 3 that we could have if we take out China now instead of letting them launch the nukes.
I feel like we've talked about so much stuff.
And like
There's
this is the
tons
book.
more that we could.
This is the book. We spent 2 hours on this. That's it.
Yeah.
So good. It's a classic for a reason.
That's a cool cover you have there, Patrick. I like that.
Yeah, it's like a bug, but it's a spaceship.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked it.
Yeah, sadly,
I got rid of my Casper Van Diem cover for a real one when I started collecting sci-fi books in mass.
I thought I'll grab the cheap one off Amazon, and then when I'm in half price books, I'll check every time I'm there until I find a nice copy to replace it with. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you to the Free Narnian for coming and for lending us his enthusiasm for this book.
Mhm.
Thank you for inviting me.
I think probably you played a large role in us choosing this book by influencing us via social media.
I'm officially an influencer.
And thank you to Hannah, who had to pop out And of course to Michael and Patrick, who have been with me through this book club for several books now. Not sure where we're going next with the book club, but we will be discussing it on my Discord. If you're interested in joining, reach out to me. I'll send you a link. Have a great day.